it's Crystal. Welcome back to my kitchen / channel. I thought I'd tape a little quick intro to the video that I'm gonna post while my kitchen is a mess and I'm in my Sunday best. Just ignore the no makeup, hair up look. Our Canadian Thanksgiving was about 3 weeks ago, and I had made a chocolate pudding pie, a pecan pie, and a pumpkin pie. The night before Thanksgiving, I just kind of had the urge to make all these pies. I'm not a baker by tradition. I wasn't even gonna tape it for YouTube. And then I started the egg whites for my chocolate pudding pie and thought maybe I should tape it just in case, because I rarely ever make the same thing right away. It takes me a while, and I knew there would be a lot of people wanting the recipe, so I did tape it. I wasn't following a recipe. For the crusts, I kind of improvised and took what I would use in my no-bake cheesecake and altered it a bit to make it more bake friendly. So it's just kind of winging it. I saw it TikTok with a pumpkin pie using a can of condensed milk and pumpkin, so I figured how hard could it be? Traditionally, I'm not a baker. I've never made a pumpkin pie or a pecan pie, but they worked out great. I have made the chocolate pudding quite a bit, and I've made the crusts before, but never all three of these together. So I don't have an exact measurement for some things. Again, it wasn't planned, but I hope you guys enjoy the video. I'm gonna start with how I made my crusts. I did 3 crusts, and then I'll go into each video. So I will put a timestamp in the description so you can skip ahead to which pie you'd like. And yeah, that's it. Again, I'm saying too much. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoy the video. Don't forget to subscribe and all that good stuff. And yeah, let me know if you try any of them. So here is the pecan pie and the pumpkin pie, and last, the chocolate pudding pie. I did not make these photo worthy, I know, but they were all delicious. And here are the crusts. So let's hop into the crusts. I started with 1.5 cups of medium desiccated coconut unsweetened. I was using my 1/2 cup to measure this. I would have just kind of freehand poured the coconut if I wasn't doing the video, but I measured out 3.5 cups, so 1.5 cups of the coconut, and then pork rinds, that's 1 big handful, and then a few little extras to fill up my bullet. So again, not an exact measurement in grams and all that, but I closed up my bullet lid and blended the two together. I wasn't trying to make a flour. I was just trying to break up the pork rinds and break up the coconut a little bit more, not have it clumped together. You can see it's kind of loose still and not all caked together. I poured the crumb mixture into my mixing bowl, making sure not to miss any of the crumbs. I then added 2 tablespoons of Brown Swerve, and then just under 1/4 cup of monk fruit sweetener, the granule type. I used the granule type in this crust to give it a variance in texture and almost give it more of a graham crumb feel. I broke up the lumps with my fork and then added 2 tablespoons of lard. So I do not use lard in my non-bake cheesecake crust, but I decided to use it in this crust because I was going to be baking it. So I kind of chopped it into the mixture with my fork. I wasn't sure how much I needed, so I added just the 2 tablespoons to start, and again worked it through. Decided to add 1 more heaping tablespoon and worked that in, again breaking it up into the mixture with my fork, chopping it in, and I got in there with my hands just to make sure it was really well mixed. I added 1 egg and mixed that in. it was sticking together quite well. So then I just had these metal tin dollar store pie crusts that I was using for my pie crusts. So if you were going to use a baking pan, a glass one, you might need to alter your pie crust measurements or whatnot. You probably wouldn't be able to get 3 pies if you had 3 bigger pie dishes, but for these little tin dishes it worked out great. I kind of pressed in the mixture to make the one pie crust. So this first pie crust I'm doing was the pie crust that I ended up using for the chocolate pudding pie, and it was a bit thicker because I wasn't being as chintzy with the crust at that point yet, and then I realized how much it was actually taking to fill up these tins, so I got a thinner part pressed into the next pan of the mixture, and then I ran out, so I had to make more mixture. So this was just a cup of the coconut, whereas before I used a cup and a half. Again, I filled up my bullet with more pork rinds, so it was like 2 handfuls versus the 1 and a little bit before. Mixed it up the same way. I added the same amount of sugars because I still had a whole pie crust and a half to get through. So again, a 1/4 cup of the monk fruit sweetener and 2 tablespoons of the Brown Swerve. Broke it up with my fork. I was trying to get all the crumbs at this point because I had no more coconut after this. So 2 tablespoons of the lard. Even though I was short on the coconut, I was just winging it and hoping for the best. Broke up the clumps and then still decided to go ahead and add 1 more tablespoon of lard, maybe not as hefty, and worked that in with my fork as well. I added 1 egg, so worked that in as well. The mixture wasn't quite the same, obviously, because I didn't have the same amount of coconut, but it still worked. So I just preferred the thicker crust of the chocolate pudding the best, and that it had more coconut in it. So if you had more coconut at home, I definitely do it the way I did in the first bullet mixture. So I did the sides of the other pie, and then I filled in my last pie, really stretching my mixture, like definitely not as thick as my first pie crust I did, but again, we were winging it. It was just me and my husband that was pretty much going to be eating the pie. The kids did eat the pumpkin pie, so I wasn't too worried. I wasn't worried about it looking a certain way either. We just wanted something to fill that pie niche on Thanksgiving. So I poked all of the crusts with fork as to prevent it from bubbling funny and cook evenly, and then placed them into the oven. I did 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about just under 15 minutes. I probably next time will pull them earlier because they almost got a little bit too brown considering how much they were going to be in the oven for the pumpkin pie and the pecan pie. I blotted a little bit of the excess grease, especially in the 2 that had less coconut. The other one didn't have any grease. So that there is the pie crusts. I will jump into the chocolate pudding pie first. Okay, so here is the chocolate pudding pie. Let's just pause here for a minute. I know this pie does not win photo of the year. I actually don't have better video of it, and I'm sorry. I was not planning again to film and tape, and I wasn't too worried about it making it look cookbook worthy, shall we say. I also had started to cook the egg whites already for this pie, and then felt that maybe I should tape it. So my first impulse when baking 3 pies was to start with my egg whites. I think I might have cleaned my pressure cooker. That's why I thought I'd just do it. Otherwise I wouldn't get it done, and I did not tape myself starting the egg white cooking process. But that's okay. We'll jump right in from the point of them being cooked. Okay, so we will continue with the video. The egg whites were cooked in my Ninja Foodie pressure cooker. That is them here. I'm gonna pause the video again to do a little bit of explaining. I had used a carton and a half of egg whites and 1 whole egg. I mixed it up in the bottom of my pressure cooker and then added the pressure cooker lid. I did, I believe, 5 minutes on my pressure cooker option. And then it just kind of sat in my pressure cooker till I was ready to whip up the mixture. So again, that was a carton and a half of egg whites. It was just the little cartons of egg whites. I believe they're 500 mils. And then a whole egg, because I like to add a whole egg to my chocolate pudding mixture. Okay, so we will unpause the video and go on. Okay, so here's where it gets a little bit tricky with the measurements too, because I didn't use quite half of the mixture. I just wanted to fill my bullet with the egg white mixture. So I ended up using just under half of the mixture. Every time I make this chocolate pudding, my amount of egg whites vary a little bit because sometimes I just scramble the egg whites. I've been actually using my pressure cooker lately because it's just so much easier. So it was just under half the mixture that I ended up using. I poured a splash of the caramel fudge waffle cone skinny syrup to my mixture. This is optional. You don't need skinny syrup. I know some people don't like the artificial sweeteners, and that's fine. You could leave it out. I added a dash of salt and 2 tablespoons of chocolate cocoa powder and a splash of vanilla. You could also use like a chocolate flavor if you didn't want to use the skinny syrup. And then I added 3 tablespoons of confectioner's swerve. And I normally don't add cream cheese to my chocolate pudding, but because I wanted this to have more of a thicker feel, I added a heaping tablespoon of light cream cheese and then a tablespoon of cream and a 1/4 cup of water. I mixed it all up in my bullet. This bullet is really good at pureeing the mixture for me. I wanted all of the egg white mixture pureed so there was no egg white left. It all was combined perfectly. You can see there's no lumps or clumps. It pours into my bowl quite nicely. Because my pie crust wasn't done at this point, I poured it into a bowl. Had I poured the mixture directly into my done pie crust, my pie would have looked a lot more cookbook worthy. But I put it into a bowl and set it in the fridge to chill until my pie crust was done. Once my pie crust was done, I pulled the mixture from my fridge, and you can see it doesn't have that smooth consistency it did out of the bullet. So if I were to make this again, I would wait for my pie crust to be done before mixing up the pie mixture, and then I would pour it directly into the pie crust. That way it would look a lot more sleek and presentable. I added the mixture, covered it with foil, put it in the fridge, and did not open up the pie again until Thanksgiving and when we were ready to eat. So here we've already had Thanksgiving dinner. I pulled out the pie. Again, there was no heating necessary because this is a cool pie. I sliced up a piece of the pie and like the crust. This was my favorite crust because I did a thicker layer on the bottom. Everything was really good. I really enjoyed this pie. I didn't have to feel as guilty about eating this pie as maybe the other pies, but yeah, I didn't get any great photos. Here's a side angle. That is what's in the pie dish there. The crust held up pretty well. And I did add a dollop of heavy whip, and that was it. This is a few days later, and you can see it still held up really well. It was just as tasty. There was no whipped cream added. I know, again, not photo worthy, but yeah. So we will move on to our pumpkin pie now. So I had never made a pumpkin pie, but I figured I'd just wing it from the TikTok that I seen. I don't even know whose TikTok it was, but I had a whole can of pumpkin puree. This was just no-name brand pumpkin puree. There's nothing added to it. It is a bit smaller than the other cans, I think by 50 mils or something like that. I added a half cup of heavy cream, and then I added a half cup of 10% cream. I just didn't want it all with the heavy cream. And then I added 2 whole eggs. I added a 1/3 cup of confectioner's Swerve. I added a dash of salt as a flavor enhancer, of course, and then a teaspoon of vanilla, and then 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I had some pumpkin spice skinny syrup. So again, if you don't like pumpkin spice skinny syrup, I added about a tablespoon, by the way. You could add some pumpkin spice blend. That's just what I used, and Aniston wanted to mix up the mixture. So here she is mixing it up really well with the whisk. We tasted it. I added a little bit more pumpkin spice sweetener, and then we poured the mixture into our pre-made pumpkin pie crust. It poured out quite nicely and filled it just right. I placed it in the oven, so I ended up setting my timer for 43 minutes because my oven runs hot. I did move it up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is what it looked like when I pulled it out. So this was it at 43 minutes. It looked pretty good. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, except that the crust was a little bit overdone on the end there. So maybe if I covered it, it would have prevented the crust from browning as much. But other than that, I was quite happy with how this pumpkin pie turned out. It was my first time making a pumpkin pie, keto or not, and I was quite happy with it. Like I said, I did get a little bit better video of the pumpkin pie versus my chocolate pudding pie. This is what it looked like the night before. I covered it with foil and then again placed it in the fridge. So here's the next day. The pie is out, and we I heated each piece individually. I just nuked it for a bit versus a rebaking. This pie was a little bit trickier to get out because the crust wasn't as thick as the chocolate pudding pie, but still just as tasty. But you can see there, it's a lot thinner. All in all, I was really happy. Again, if I were to make this again, I would do a thicker crust, maybe not bake it as long. I added a dollop of whipped cream, and this is the only pie Ryder would eat, and he actually really liked it. So I was quite surprised, and I'll definitely be making it again. So we will move on to the pecan pie. Here is the pecan pie. I was quite happy with how it turned out, but I am going to pause here just to explain a little bit. I did not follow a recipe per se for the pecan pie. I searched on YouTube how to make a pecan pie actually, and not a keto version. Sometimes it's hard for me to sift through a lot of keto videos. My tastes are a bit different, so I googled an easy pecan pie recipe, and the first one that came up that was short, I kind of looked at the ingredient lists and converted them in my head to a keto version and just kind of wrote down what I'd swap out keto wise. I don't even remember what video it was, to tell you the truth. Often when I'm making something, that is what I do. I'll find a recipe and convert it in my head into keto and tweak it accordingly and just kind of wing it. If I do find that video, I will add it in the description, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. So yeah, that is how I made this pecan pie. I'm not traditionally a pecan pie lover. I made it more so for my husband. I kind of like butter tarts more. So next time I may try to make a butter tart pie kind of thing. But anyways, let's unpause the video and we'll get into how I made this pecan pie. So this is the caramel sauce that I used for the pecan pie. I just thought I'd show you guys. I got it from Sugar Free and More. It's just 0 calories, 0 fat, sugar-free. But yeah, I think you could use whatever syrup you had on hand. I did measure out a cup and a half of pecans, and then I measured out the caramel syrup sauce. So this was half a cup that I used. I wanted to make sure I got all of the sauce out, so I ended up scraping the rest out with my spatula. I added a 1/3 cup of powdered Swerve, and then I added 2 tablespoons of Brown Swerve, a splash of vanilla, a dash of salt, and I added a few pumps of my vanilla skinny syrup, and I added 3 whole eggs. I added a tablespoon of melted butter, and again, my little helper Aniston wanted to mix up the mixture, so she went to town mixing it up. Once it was thoroughly combined, we added it to our ready-made pie crust. This mixture fit into my pie crust perfect. Had it been a bigger pie, it probably just wouldn't have come up as high, but it fit perfect. I did have a handful reserve of pecans that I placed and topped the pie with to make it look more aesthetically pleasing. That way you could kind of see the pecans on top in a nice pattern, so to speak. I put it on a baking tray and baked it in the oven for about 15 minutes at 350, and then I covered it with foil and baked it the remainder half hour at 350, just to prevent it from browning too much. So once it was good and covered, I placed it back in the oven for another half hour, and then when I pulled it out, this is it here. The crust again got still brown, but for my first pecan pie, I was pretty happy with how it turned out. Again, if the pie crust was a bit thicker, it might not have gotten as brown. But yeah, I covered it up and put it in the fridge until the next day. Again, we heated this up individually by the slice as cut, because mainly my husband and myself that were eating it. So this is the this is the pecan pie cut. Better side angle look. I topped my piece with a little bit of ice cream. It was delicious, and then we went on to place categories. All right, that is it, guys. That is the pie recipes. For those of you that were waiting from Instagram for the recipes, thank you for your patience. I'm sorry it took me so long. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let me know if you try any of the pies and what you think. If anyone has a recipe for like a buttery tart pecan or a butter tart pie kind of thing, let me know. Maybe I'll make it for Christmas. Again, I'm sorry about the egg white part being out of the video. I'll try to get better at remembering just to tape right from the beginning. But thank you all for watching. Let me know if you try them, and I'm gonna get back to making dinner here, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.